And my name is Jesse Emery. I want to talk to you a few minutes about the greatest day of my life. But before I get to that part, I want to back up just a little bit and give you a little bit of information about myself. I am a Marine Corps veteran. I am a war veteran. And I was bulletproof. So I thought. However, things that I went through in my life and things that I've done in my life, things that I've seen in my life has made me to the point to where I was hardcore, and then I faced life as thinking I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof and nothing can hurt me. And the Marine Corps molds your mind this way, and this is okay when you're in the uniform, but it's not so okay when you get out in the outside world because things start bothering you. I suffer from PTSD, okay, because of things I've been through and things I've seen. I was injured in Kandahar going to the Kunar province, and it tore my life apart because the only one thing I wanted to do is be a career Marine and be able to retire with the pride and with my head held high. And when I was injured, it took me to a place that I never thought I would be. And I became hateful, and I was already to the point to where I showed no emotion anyway, but I was to the point to where I was hateful, and I was hateful to people, and I was even hateful to my own family. I became a person that I did not receive to be, because my grandparents, as they raised me, they taught me right from wrong, and they taught me how to be a good person. My grandfather was a very good person. He's taught me a lot, and I've learned a lot from my grandfather. My grandfather was close, and we shared a lot of conversations just sitting by the pond and fishing. But if my grandfather knew how bad things got in my mind, he would probably have one of the most sternest talks with me that he's ever had. And when my grandfather had a stern talk, it wasn't just a talk. And I'm just going to leave it right there. However, as life went on and as my Marine Corps career ended, my son was still overseas. And he was in Iraq City, and he was killed by a sniper. That devastated me even more because I just couldn't bear the thought of my son being killed by a sniper, because that was my profession. And I beat myself up to the fact that I thought that this happened to my son for my sins and for what I've done and for what I've done wrong, and for the fact that I had no feeling when it came to shooting anyone. So I blamed myself. I was working at a plant in Georgia at the time, and I was working long hours trying to make the money that I was used to making, and sometimes, it just wasn't getting it. It wasn't having it. And me and my wife had drifted apart to the point to where we wasn't talking to each other. We wasn't being there for each other. We had no communication other than passing each other by. And it became harder and harder to talk and have a relationship. It became harder and harder just to look at each other. It became harder and harder just to be in the same house with each other. So one day I come home from work. I actually quit the job. And I come home from work and I walked by her. She didn't say a word. I packed my rucksack and took all my essential stuff that I needed, my survival kit, everything I needed. I throwed it in there. I throwed my blankets that I had still from the Marine Corps. I throwed it all in there, my bedroll, everything right there. And I put it on my back. I looked at her and I said, I'm gone. She said, bye. And I knew in my heart as I walked out the door, that was over. That was over. it devastated us both to the point to where we just quit. Whereas I walked, I didn't even take my vehicle, I didn't take my motorcycle, I didn't take anything, but I walked away because I didn't want to be around anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to have a relationship with anybody. I just needed to be by myself. So I went into the woods, and this happened in Georgia. And I started camping, and I started walking, and the more I walked every day. And the more I walked, the more I wanted to stay in the woods. The more I camped, the more I wanted to stay. The more I found out that this was the only peace that I thought that I was going to have, was being by myself. 2 years, I stayed in the woods. And I went from Georgia all the way to North Carolina, staying in the woods. And then I remember and it was a Wednesday, it was just as clear, just as pretty, and just as a wonderful day as you could ask for, to be able to walk through nature and just take in everything that it is. And I came up on a man, he was at a campsite. Perfect campsite, right up against the mountain hill. He had his little one-man tent out, and he had coffee on the fire, and you could tell he's been fishing, and he had just little things laying around. And he asked me to come and join him and be able to, just come have some coffee. And I hadn't had coffee in a minute, so I wanted to come, and coffee sounded good to me. I'm going to go get me some coffee, all right? This sounds really awesome. So I'm sitting down, and I'm drinking coffee with this man, and he didn't have no cream and sugar, but that's okay. It was all right to drink it black, trust me. But anyway, this man sit there and he talks to me. He had this smile on his face, and he had shoulder length gray hair, and he had a little beard, and a real nice guy. And he's sitting there, and he had this smile on his face, and this was irritating me because I kind of felt like Walter. But anyway, he was irritating me because he was so happy. But still, I sat there, and he says, "Do you mind if I tell you a little story?" I said, "No, I don't mind." He said, "Well, it's not so much a story as it is a statement. I want to tell you reality. I want to tell you a truth. I want to tell you about Jesus." And the first inclination I wanted to do was just get up and walk off because I was mad at God. I was mad that he would allow things like wars go on and things like lives get messed up because of PTSD. I was mad because he took my son. And I did not want to hear about God. But there was something that just kept compelling me to stay put. Something that was just telling me, wait, don't go anywhere just yet. And it was deep in my soul, and I could feel it, but I wanted to leave, but I just couldn't. It was almost like I was frozen. And the more this man talked, the more I wanted to sit and listen. But then again, the more I wanted to get up and leave. So he told me John 3:16. But he told it to me with a little twist. We know John 3:16 is, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life." Now he looked at me strictly in my eyes and said, "Let's take the world out of it." He said, "I want to make it a little more personal." He said, "I want you to say this. I want you to think about this. For God so loved," what's your name? Jesse. "For God so loved Jesse that he gave his only begotten Son, that if Jesse would believe in him, Jesse would not perish but have everlasting life." And that became personal. It became personal. Okay? And then he talked about John 15:13, where it talks about no greater love hath any man than a man that would lay down his life for his friends. And he said, did you know that you are his friend? I chuckled. I laughed. I didn't think I was anybody's friend. I didn't think for 1 minute with the things I've done and the things I've seen and the feelings I had that wasn't even possible, that God was punishing me because my career was over, my son is gone, and I'm in the woods. How can God love me? And that's exactly what I asked him. How can God love me? And he showed me through his words. Do you think you come across my campsite by chance? Do you think that you was just on a stroll and that you would meet people camping in these woods every day? Did you think for 1 minute that you just chose the direction you was walking in? Never thought of it. I just walked. I just went. And he says, we did not meet by chance. This is not a coincidence. This is a divine appointment right here. I'm like, yeah. Okay. Crazy guy. All right. Yeah, I got you. And then he told me about how God demonstrates his love. He demonstrates his love through his son, Jesus Christ. In Romans 5:8, it says, but God demonstrates his love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Now, this verse came much later after his talk, but this verse stood out to me because of those words he spoke. And he said that God wants to take your life and he wants to do something wonderful with it. God wants to put you in a place to where he can move through you. Okay, crazy guy. See, I was hardened in my heart. And as I listened to this man talk about how wonderful God is and how loving Jesus is, I didn't want to hear it. So eventually I got him to say, look, I'd love to sit and talk some more, but I've got to get going. I've got a certain destination I want to get to before it gets nightfall. And as you know, you're camping in these woods anyway. Once it gets night, you can't see nothing. Everything looks the same. You will get lost. And I got my bearings down pretty good. I'm trained to do that. So I need to take off. Nicely, he says, all right. He said, just do me one favor. He says, as you walk through these woods and you look around, just take a gaze at everything God has created around you and how wonderful it is. Think about how beautiful the mountaintops are. Think about how beautiful the valleys look when you're standing on the edge of the mountain and you're looking down. Think about how wonderful it looks. We'll see the wildlife running through what God has made. So I'm off. It couldn't have been no more than 10, maybe 15 minutes tops. thinking about what this man said, I turned around. I headed back. When I got back to the area where the man was camping, there was absolutely no sign that he was even there. So I sat down and I was so confused, thinking, okay, maybe I went to the wrong place, but everything around the site looks the same. It's not dark yet. I know I ain't crazy. I know I just talked to somebody, but he's gone. So after sitting there for a while and just wondering, this is not happening, okay? I must be crazy. I must be crazy. This is just not going to disappear that quick. Okay, so I looked around, me being a Marine, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to find this guy. And I'm looking around for tracks, and there is none. The only tracks are mine. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, all right, this ain't happening. So I start walking again. The whole time I was walking that day, I couldn't get my mind off of what took place earlier. And then when it started getting dusky, I found a good campsite and I parked up against the hill and I just thought about what this man said. Saturday, I made a decision. After 3 days of remembering over and over in my head that there must be some truth to this. So Saturday, I come out. I come out of the woods and I went and got me a room and I got cleaned up and I shaved. And I started walking around town in North Carolina, just trying to find a church that maybe they won't look at me like I'm just whatever. That maybe a church that it may look that I could be comfortable in. Big ones didn't work, and I just, maybe just something small I can get in and out, and that'll be that. And I'll come across this church, and I tell you, just something about that church that stood out in Asheville, North Carolina. It stood out so much, and it was like a magnet that was drawing me, and it was like tugging at me to come inside, to come inside, to come inside. So I went inside. When I got in, I'm looking for a small church, okay, and this was huge and had so many people around, and I'm thinking, okay, I need to go out, because I'm not going to do good around all these people. But as I was walking in, there was this man on the platform on the sacred stage, and he was talking about how God has saved his life after being in a wreck and almost dying and through this wreck, and he severed his spine and it was clearly in half, and he was able to get up and walk with his spine severed. How he was a bad alcoholic and a drug addict, doing rock music. He was in a rock band, and how he drunk so much alcohol that he rode the van that all the instruments was in, and he flipped it several times, and again he almost dies. The third time, how he was just bowed down and in bondage with this drug addiction and this alcoholism that he took in his own bathroom, and he cut his wrist just so he could get out of it all. And he said that when the when the ambulance got there, he was laying in a 1/4 inch of blood in the bathroom, and they pronounced him dead on the scene. And when they took him to the hospital, his mother had met in there, and she just fell to her knees, and she began to pray and pray and pray and pray that God would take and raise her son, that God will not take her son, because she knew that he was the same God on the throne. Amen. That when Jesus spoke to Lazarus, he said, Father, thank you for hearing me, and so that you may be glorified. And he said, Lazarus, get up. And then this man, he said that he was on his way to the morgue, and he started moving. His faithful mother had prayed all 3 times. All 3 times. All this caught my attention, because he said these words. He says, listen. He said, if you're out there and you're in bondage of your own thoughts, and you're in your own prison of your own self, and you just can't seem to break free. You can't seem to just get loose. You can't seem to find your way out. You can't seem to find your pathway to being who you're supposed to be. He says this. He says, I want you to remember John 3:16. For God so loved the world. And as he was reading that verse, I'm sitting in the back, or standing in the back, because there wasn't nowhere to sit. I was standing in the back up against the wall. And as he said this verse again, I remember the guy in the woods that was putting my name in it. And I'm standing in the back of this church. And as he was saying, for God so loved, when he got to that, I said, for God so loved Jesse, that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him, no, not whosoever, if Jesse would just believe in him, Jesse shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And I knelt down that wall, and I gave my life to Christ. I said, Lord, if you help me, I'll serve you. I said, Lord, if you just help me. And as I was just saying this, because I didn't know how to pray, and I didn't know if that was good enough, I didn't know hardly anything. This song that I'm fixing to share with you was the song that brought a man that was 10 foot tall and bulletproof to his knees and tears. Let it bless you. All alone, broken hearted, try to calm the raging battles in my mind. Searching for the answers, troubled soul just couldn't seem to find. I saw the flower blooming, there was no rain or sunshine, and I knew not that this flower would change the rest of my life. I found the lily in my valley, found strength when I was warm. I found a place to leave my burdens. I found the victory from storm. A place where I could trade dark skies to beaming rays of sunshine. I found the lily in my valley, if you're down and broken hearted and you just can't seem to find your peace of mind, searching for your answers, your problems are getting worse all the time. Just reach your hands to Jesus, He'll take you in and break the ties of bind. He'll be the wind in your valley, you can watch it bloom all the time. He'll be the lily in your valley, He'll be the strength when you walk. He'll be a place to leave your burden. He'll give you refuge from storm. A place where you can trade dark skies to be the rays of sunshine. He'll be the lily in your valley and watch it bloom all the time. I felt the lily in my valley. I found the stream that was warm. I found a place to leave my burden. I found the refuge from the storm, a place where I could trade dark skies to be the rays of sunshine. I found a lily in my valley, I watch it bloom all the time. I found a lily in my valley, I watch it bloom all the time. Listen, if you don't know Jesus Christ, I pray that you will, because it's the greatest move you'll ever make. And those of you who do know Jesus, I hope this has been a real blessing. I'm praying for you during this time of confusion, this time of pandemic, and may God bless you all. Thank you.